crowd, outside a luxury charity event in Lagos, burst into laughter when a little girl suddenly pointed across the street. "Dad, that's my brother." 8-year-old Adayora Ugwu stood beside her father, billionaire tech magnate, Theophilus Ugwu. Her small finger aimed at a skinny teenage boy, pushing a rusted garbage cart. The boy froze. His clothes were stained with dirt. His hands smelled of trash, but his eyes looked painfully familiar. The laughter slowly faded as Theophilus turned pale, because the name written on the boy's worn school badge, Chibuzor Okafor, was the same surname as the woman he once loved, the woman he believed had disappeared 14 years ago. And suddenly the past he buried might be standing in the street holding a trash bag.
Before we continue this story, tell me in the comments, what country are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? And if stories about truth, justice, and unexpected family touch your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.
The city of Lagos rarely slept. Even before sunrise, the streets were already alive with the sound of engines, traders shouting across roadside stalls, and the distant roar of buses fighting through endless traffic. Skyscrapers glimmered above the morning haze, symbols of ambition, rising from a city where fortunes could be built or destroyed in a single generation. At the center of that world stood one name everyone recognized: Theophilus Ugwu. By the age of 42, Theophilus had become one of the most respected technology entrepreneurs in Nigeria. His company, Ugwu Dynamics, had transformed digital infrastructure across West Africa. Government officials consulted him. International investors admired him. Magazines regularly listed him among the continent's most influential business leaders. But the public version of Theophilus Ugwu was only part of the truth. Behind the headlines and polished interviews was a man who lived a far quieter life than most people imagined. His mansion stood on the peaceful edge of Ikoyi, surrounded by tall palm trees and iron gates guarded day and night. The house itself was enormous, white stone walls, wide glass windows, a garden large enough to host charity galas. Yet inside, the atmosphere felt strangely calm, almost too calm. Because the house was not filled with the noise of a large family. It belonged to just two people, Theophilus and his daughter, 8-year-old Adayora Ugwu. That morning, Adayora sat cross-legged on the kitchen counter, swinging her feet while the housekeeper prepared breakfast. Her hair was neatly braided with tiny gold beads that clicked softly when she moved. "Daddy," she said suddenly. Theophilus looked up from his tablet, where he had been reviewing a contract proposal. "Yes," Ada, she tilted her head thoughtfully. "Why do some people have brothers and sisters, but I don't?" The question hung in the air longer than expected. The housekeeper quietly pretended not to hear. Theophilus placed the tablet down slowly. Adayora was not asking for the first time. Children were curious by nature, and Adayora's school was full of large families. She often came home telling stories about classmates with 2 brothers, 3 sisters, cousins who lived in the same house. But each time she asked, Theophilus gave the same gentle answer. "Every family is different," he said softly. Adayora considered this. "But wouldn't it be fun," she continued, "someone to play with all the time?" Theophilus smiled faintly. "You already have many friends." "That's not the same," she said with the serious logic of a child. For a moment he didn't respond, because the truth was, he didn't know how to answer. Adayora slid off the counter and ran toward the dining table, already distracted by a bowl of fruit. Theophilus watched her quietly. Sometimes he wondered if the quiet in the house was a blessing or a punishment. His wife, Amaka, had died 5 years earlier, after a sudden illness. Since then, raising Adayora had become the center of his world. Every business trip, every major decision, every late-night meeting was arranged around one simple priority: his daughter. Yet even with that love, there was a corner of his life he had locked away so completely that he rarely allowed himself to think about it. A past that felt like another lifetime. Theophilus stood and walked toward the large window overlooking the garden. Outside, the morning sun was beginning to burn through the clouds. Somewhere deep in his mind, a memory flickered briefly. A young woman laughing, dark eyes full of stubborn fire. But the memory vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. He pushed it away, just as he had done for years. There was too much work to do today. Across the city, in a place far removed from the quiet streets of Ikoyi, another morning had begun very differently. In Ajegunle, one of Lagos's most crowded neighborhoods, narrow alleys twisted between rows of small houses, built from cement blocks and rusted metal sheets. Here, the air carried a mixture of cooking smoke, sea wind, and the constant movement of people struggling to make a living. Inside a tiny two-room home, Chibuzor Okafor was already awake. The 13-year-old boy moved quietly so he would not disturb the old woman sleeping on the mattress beside the wall. His grandmother, Mama Nkem, had been coughing through most of the night again. Chibuzor carefully poured water into a metal cup and placed it beside her bed before stepping outside. The morning air was cool, but it wouldn't stay that way for long. He wore the same school uniform he had washed the night before. It was faded and slightly too small now, but it was clean. Clean mattered, even if the rest of the world didn't always notice. Outside the door leaned a battered handcart made from old bicycle wheels and wooden boards. Several empty sacks were tied neatly to its side. Chibuzor checked them carefully. Plastic bottles, metal cans, anything recyclable. The boy worked quickly, but methodically. After school each day, he collected waste from streets and dumpsters, then sold the materials to a recycling depot near the harbor. The money paid for food and medicine, especially medicine. From inside the house, Mama Nkem's voice called weakly, "Chibuzor, are you leaving already?" He stepped back inside immediately. The old woman had pushed herself up against the wall, wrapped in a faded blanket. "You should rest," he said gently. She shook her head. "You have school. I'll go soon." Her eyes softened as she studied him. "You work too hard for a boy your age." Chibuzor smiled faintly. "It's not hard." Both of them knew that wasn't true, but neither of them said it aloud. Mama Nkem reached for his hand. "You remind me of your mother," she murmured.